Happening now, demonstrations at the U.S. Supreme Court, where 50 years of federal abortion rights for women have been struck down. We're getting new reaction to the ruling overturning Roe versus Wade, looking at the consequences for the nation and the legal, political, and health battles ahead in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room. We begin with the U.S. Supreme Court decision undoing a half-century-old precedent and ending a woman's guaranteed federal right to an abortion. CNN Justice correspondent Jessica Schneider has more on the ruling and the ramifications.
Roe v. Wade no longer the law of the land, with the Supreme Court overturning nearly 50 years of precedent, the court eliminating the constitutional right to an abortion and leaving all decisions concerning abortion rights to individual states. The final 5-4 majority opinion strikingly similar to the draft from Justice Samuel Alito that was leaked last month. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, Alito writes. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. In a dissenting opinion, the court's liberal justices lament the current state of the conservative court, saying, "With sorrow, for this court, but more for the many millions of American women who have today lost a fundamental constitutional protection, we dissent." The monumental move made possible by a conservative supermajority, including 3 of Donald Trump's nominees. Chief Justice John Roberts, diverging somewhat from the majority, voting to uphold Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban, but stopping short of overturning Roe v. Wade. The decision is a turn for 2 of the justices who voted to overturn Roe after they seemed to indicate at their confirmation hearings they wouldn't.
It is an important precedent of the Supreme Court.
That's the law of the land. I accept the law of the land, Senator, yes.
Democrats, including President Biden, are outraged.
This is not over.
And urging voters to back candidates who back abortion rights in the midterm elections.
How about those justices coming before the senators and saying that they respected the precedent of the court? This cruel ruling is outrageous and heart-wrenching, but make no mistake, it's all on the ballot in November.
Protests are popping up around the country as individual states are set to move rapidly. 26 states are likely to ban abortion completely, including 13 states that have trigger laws on the books, which set abortion bans into motion as soon as Roe is overturned. Arkansas's governor tweeting, "We are able now to protect life." And South Dakota's governor responding, "As of today, all abortions are illegal in South Dakota." The Supreme Court's decision also could put other precedents at risk, like the right to same-sex marriage and access to contraception. Justice Clarence Thomas explicitly calling for the court to reconsider those other rulings, writing, "We have a duty to correct the error established in those precedents." While Alito promised nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. But the liberal justices warning no one should be confident that this majority is done with its work. And already 6 states have banned abortion. 7 more states are poised to ban abortion in the next 30 days. That's pending action from either the courts or state officials. But on the flip side, there are 16 states plus D.C. that have enacted laws that will protect abortion rights. And those states are expecting an influx of patients crossing state lines to seek abortion services. Wolf?
Jessica Schneider reporting from the Supreme Court. Thank you very much. Also tonight, President Biden is warning that the Supreme Court's decision is putting the health and the lives of women here in the United States at risk. Let's bring in our chief White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, the White House has been bracing for this Supreme Court decision. Tell our viewers what else you're learning, what other reaction you're getting.
Yeah, well, the White House has really been steeling themselves for this decision to come down ever since that draft opinion leaked several weeks ago. So much so that President Biden really already had a speech written when the ruling came down today. He just reviewed it after being briefed by his chief of staff on the final ruling, made a few changes to his speech, and then came out and declared it this sad, solemn day for America, where you're right, Wolf. He said that the health and lives of women are now at risk. And he talked about the fact that justices for decades have upheld this ruling. Justices whom he noted who had been appointed by both Republicans and Democrats. But he said that changed, Wolf. And he said something today that he doesn't often do, which is invoking the name of his predecessor.
It's a sad day for the court and for the country. Now, with Roe gone, Let's be very clear. The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk. It was 3 justices named by 1 president, Donald Trump, were the core of today's decision to upend the scales of justice and eliminate a fundamental right for women in this country.
Of course, Wolf, now the question for the White House is what they are going to do in response to this. The president today talked about some measures, talking about the Justice Department defending the rights of women who want to travel out of state if they can't get an abortion in their home state to go to another state. He talked about eliminating barriers to access to abortion medication that you can get in the mail, but really there is only so much the president can do. There's no executive action that he can sign that can restore this constitutional right that was taken away with this ruling from the Supreme Court today, which is why you saw President Biden urging Americans who believe in the right to have an abortion, the right to choose, to go and vote come November in the midterm elections, telling them to elect more pro-choice lawmakers and saying that they should make no mistake, he does believe Roe versus Wade is on the ballot this November, Wolf.
Showing our viewers pictures of demonstrations in many cities all across the country right now. Caitlin Collins at the White House, thank you very much. Let's bring in our team of legal analysts, Jeffrey Toobin, Laura Coates, and Jennifer Rogers. Laura, what does today's ruling mean for millions of American women?
It means that we woke up with certain rights and we're going to go to bed with less rights than our grandmothers had, our mothers had. In some instances, including myself, my great-grandmother had. And this is something that essentially the Supreme Court is saying, actually, you never should have had that right in the first place. It was so egregiously wrongly decided that those rights never should have existed in the first instance. The problem, of course, is that while many people may look at it right now and say these are the rights impacting women, there are a lot of things now on the horizon that under that same judicial philosophy that if it wasn't part of the nation's long-rooted history, then it should never have existed. Well, that's going to include things like same-sex marriage and same-sex sexual relations. It could include things like contraception and marriage, and could extend beyond to things such as interracial marriage as well. This is, in fact, a solemn day because it seems as though the rights that we thought we had never existed at all, according to the majority of the Supreme Court.
You make an important point. You know, Jennifer, you point out that in the rare instances when the Supreme Court has actually reversed itself, it's typically been done to grant more rights, not take them away. So how unprecedented is this decision today?
Well, it's completely unprecedented. It's really a new low for the court, Wolf, because that's exactly right. Never before has the court, in one case, Roe, recognized a constitutional right that it identifies in the case, and then later reversing that, saying, sorry, we gave you this right, you held it for 49 years, and now it's gone. The Supreme Court has made mistakes before, they've made grievous mistakes before, but they have never done this. It really is a historic low for the court.
That's absolutely right. You know, Jeffrey, this opinion states that, I'm quoting now, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. That's a quote from the opinion. Were you surprised to see this so closely echo the leaked draft opinion we all saw weeks ago from Justice Alito?
Well, not really, because this is what Justice Alito has felt for many years. It's what Justice Thomas has felt for many years. And Donald Trump, when he ran for president, he said, I am going to appoint justices to the court who will vote to overturn Roe v. Wade. Alito, Thomas, plus 3 Trump justices, that gets you to 5, and that's a majority. And you know, this has been a goal of the conservative movement for many years. This is the reason why conservatives stood by Donald Trump despite all the scandals, despite his loose personal life. They got what they wanted out of the Trump presidency today.
Yeah, they certainly did. You know, Laura, does this ruling open the floodgates potentially for lawsuits against abortion providers or indeed anyone who helps a woman get an abortion?
It does, and also presents interstate conflicts now in terms of whether somebody in one state is helping a person in another state, what are the implications there. It really is going to just legal chaos, Wolf, but really a prosecutor's nightmare in the sense of how is one to enforce this, either in civil lawsuits, of course, or even in the criminal context. It's one thing to outlaw abortion, but how will you criminalize abortion? Because that's the next leap here. How do you solve your cases? How do you prove your cases? How do you demonstrate if the womb itself is going to be the so-called crime scene? How do you exactly prove that an illegal abortion has been occurred or that it's been aided in some meaningful way by somebody without trampling on other privacy interests, including doctor-patient confidentiality and other things as well. Is it surveillance? Are fertility app tracking devices now going to be subpoenaed? I mean, from an enforcement standpoint, it really is unprecedented.
And there's already an arms race among states to have the strictest anti-abortion laws, the ones that reach the most extensively across state lines to try to criminalize efforts to help women have abortions. So one of the issues to keep an eye on here is, if someone in a state where abortion is legal helps someone get an abortion, is that person in New York, say, a legalized abortion state, is that person going to be prosecuted in Oklahoma or Missouri, where abortion and helping getting an abortion is illegal? This is going to be a legal fight that goes on and on for probably the rest of all of our lifetime.
Jeffrey, I want to just follow up with you because you're an expert on the Supreme Court. Justice Clarence Thomas, in his concurring opinion, wrote this, and I'm quoting him now: "In future cases, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell." What does that mean as far as you're concerned?
Well, what it means is Justice Alito's opinion says we are only going to recognize constitutional rights that are actually mentioned in the Constitution. The Constitution does not use the word abortion. Abortion is not protected. Those three cases involve constitutional rights that the court has recognized that are not in the Constitution. Griswold was the right of married people to buy contraception. Obergefell was the right to same-sex marriage. Lawrence v. Texas was same-sex sexual relations. None of that is mentioned in the Constitution, and Justice Thomas wants to see all those protections go away. That is entirely consistent with today's decision, and it's next on the conservative agenda in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I want you and our viewers to watch how Trump-nominated Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh previously spoke about Roe versus Wade during their confirmation hearings. Listen to this.
That's the law of the land. I accept the law of the land, Senator. Yes.
As a judge, it is an important precedent of the Supreme Court. By it, I mean Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Been reaffirmed many times.
So did they actually lie during those confirmation hearings?
Well, if you mean, did they mislead the senators? Were they disingenuous? Then yes. If you mean, did they lie? Like, are they prosecutable for perjury? The answer has to be no, because they didn't state any facts that you could provably say were false at the time. But there's no question. I mean, particularly Gorsuch with that tone in his voice. How dare you accuse me of something? I mean, they've been wanting to do this for a long time. This is not a surprise. We've seen it coming. And the fact that they didn't admit it in their confirmation hearings is frankly par for the course these days, but is adding to the frustration of people today.
And Susan Collins, who was the swing vote in the Kavanaugh
today's date,
she said
June 24th,
her entire vote was based on the fact that she believed this fairy tale that Brett Kavanaugh was telling her. But that got Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court.
Yep, that's what happened today. All right, Jennifer Rogers, Jeffrey Toobin, Laura Coates, guys, thank you very, very much. Just
annually worldwide, and though opinions on the matter are strong, many are simply unaware of how they actually work. So regardless of whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, what actually happens during an abortion? Abortion procedures range from taking a pill to surgical options, often based on availability or how far along a pregnancy is, and 92% of legal U.S. abortions take place within the first 13 weeks of gestation. The oral tablet is effective 49 days from one's last menstrual period. Often containing mifepristone, it works by blocking the hormone progesterone. Progesterone promotes smooth muscle relaxation in the uterine wall throughout pregnancy, and so the pill causes the uterus to contract and the embryo to be expelled in what seems like a heavy period. Vacuum aspiration is a surgical procedure usually used up to 16 weeks after conception and is typically performed under local or general anesthesia. The cervix is numbed and opened wide enough to pass a slender tube into the uterus where suction is used to empty the contents. Within the same timeline, a DNC or dilation and curettage abortion can be used. First, the cervix is dilated using small instruments or medication, and then a curette is used to remove the contents of the uterus. If a pregnancy is between 12 to 24 weeks, a D&E or dilation and evacuation abortion is likely used, although only 1.2% of abortions occur after 21 weeks. In a D&E abortion, the cervix needs to be dilated wider, often using osmotic dilators, which are short rods made of seaweed or synthetic material which absorb moisture and slowly stretch the cervix. These are usually inserted the day before surgery. Once dilated, fetal and placental tissue is removed via vacuum aspiration, forceps, and a curette. The decision to have an abortion after 24 weeks is extremely rare and often due to severe fetal anomalies. When abortions are allowed by the local law, they are one of the safest procedures in medicine, with case fatality rates less than 1 death per 100,000 procedures. In the US, the risk of death associated with childbirth is 14 times higher in women than that of an abortion. There are also myths that abortion is linked to an increased risk of cancer, as well as difficulties in conceiving or carrying a future pregnancy, but both of these claims have been refuted by extensive medical research. However, unsafe abortions practiced by individuals without the necessary skills or in an environment that does not conform to medical standards cause an estimated 68,000 women to die yearly, while a further 5 million suffer temporary or permanent disability. Methods range from ingesting toxic solutions, inserting foreign bodies into the uterus, and even trauma. The World Health Organization has called unsafe abortions a preventable pandemic. And laws that limit a woman's access to an abortion or make abortions illegal do not reduce the number of abortions. Countries where abortions are illegal have roughly the same number of abortions. What changes instead is the incidence of unsafe abortions. A 2011 study did find that state-level anti-abortion laws in Texas correlated with lower abortion rates in the state, but these results did not account for women traveling to other states with less restrictive laws to receive a procedure. Conversely, researchers have found that sex education and access to contraceptive methods do reduce the number of abortions by minimizing unwanted pregnancies. This can be seen in the abortion rates decreasing significantly in the developed world since 1990. Ultimately, access to legal abortions make women's lives safer and
I'm Dr. Norman McLean. I did practice within obstetrics and gynecology for nearly 40 years. I've done in the area of maybe 8,000 births. That would include maybe 2,000 cesarean sections. I have performed abortions early in my career. Over that time, I would have certainly done between 1 and 200 terminations of pregnancy. So I know about the technique. Today, I'm going to describe a first trimester surgical abortion, otherwise called a suction D&C dilatation and curettage. This is the most frequently performed abortion technique and is typically performed between 5 and 13 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, usually a sedative, the abortionist uses a speculum like this. This speculum is placed inside the vagina and then opened using the screw on the side, allowing the abortionist to see the cervix, the entrance to the uterus. The cervix acts as a gate that stays closed for the duration of pregnancy, protecting the baby until it is ready for birth. The abortionist uses a series of metal rods called dilators, like these, which increase in thickness and diameter, and the abortionist inserts them into the cervix progressively to dilate it, gaining access to the inside of the uterus where the baby resides. At this stage of pregnancy, the baby has a heartbeat, fingers, arms, and legs, but its bones are still weak and fragile. After the cervix is dilated, the abortionist will insert a suction catheter similar to this. This is a clear plastic catheter, firm, which has a hole through which the contents of the uterus are sucked, and these contents are dragged down and into either a syringe of this nature, a plastic syringe, which can exert considerable force, or connected to a vacuum extractor, a mechanical electrical vacuum extractor. The suction machine has a force 10 to 20 times more powerful than the usual household vacuum cleaner. And using this technique, the baby is rapidly torn apart by the force of the suction and squeezed through the tubing, down the suction tube into the syringe or vacuum machine. Following the baby, the placenta is sucked out of the womb. Because the procedure is blind, that is, the abortionist is simply feeling what he is doing within the womb. One of the common problems is getting everything out, so that it's not unusual for parts of the baby to remain within the womb and parts of the placenta, which feed the baby, remain within the womb. This can lead to ongoing bleeding and infection. And in an attempt to prevent this, the abortionist will use a curette to scrape the lining of the uterus. A curette is basically a long-handled curved blade. Once the uterus is empty, the speculum is removed and the abortion is complete. The risks of suction D&C include damage to the organs, for example, perforation of the uterus or laceration of the cervix. Potentially, injury can occur to the intestines, the bladder, or nearby blood vessels. Hemorrhage and infection can occur, and in rare instances, even death. Future pregnancies are also at greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related injury to the cervix or uterus. I stopped doing abortions because I realized this is not right. This is not what I should be doing. This is not the medicine, the life-giving, healing medicine that I wanted to practice. And from that day, I stopped.